February 27th, 2024, meeting of the Richmond Sanitary District Board of Commissioners is called to order. The first item of business is approval of board minutes from February 13th of 2024.
President Miller,
Yes, Mr. Bocci?
motion to approve board minutes from February 13th, 2024 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the board minutes from February 13th of 2024 as presented. Are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item of business is approval of invoices from check dates February 9th and 16th of 2024.
President Miller,
Yes, Mr. Steens.
make a motion to approve invoices for check date run February 9th and 16th of 2024, totaling $244,443.64. There were a few significant invoices, first from Azteca Systems Holdings for $36,975, IDEM $13,615, Richmond Power and Light $60,989.10, and Co-Alliance Cooperative $24,680.94.
I second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve invoices from check dates February 9th and 16th of 2024 totaling $244,443.64. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to the director's report, and we have the full year-end report, which was a very nice report.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very long, so
Enjoyed reading through it.
I won't read it line by line, but I did kind of put together a summary to kind of go over it. But as always, I'll answer any questions that there may be that I haven't touched. But from the operation standpoint, overall, our process and volumes across each department were relatively similar to recent years. If you look back in the ones where there are multi-years shown, you'll see kind of these gradual ups and downs that take place, but everything from 2023 sort of fell within that. There are some trends, though, on a few items that I'll just kind of make note of. One is the residential cardboard program or cardboard collection, which, as you know, we were awarded that grant to start that curbside program, and that continues to grow. Our energy savings and treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant efficiencies have also increased. With the new diffuser and blower technology we put in the wastewater treatment plant upgrades, and you'll see charts for both of those pieces in there, so those have both continued to increase as well. And another piece is not really a data side per much to say, but the MS4 program has a lot of updates coming that we've alluded to over the year, and there'll be, I think this year, Elijah or Jess can correct me, but ordinances that will be coming forth for those updates in the MS4 program. But beyond that, for the most part, everything was as we would predict and fell within reasonable limits. As far as projects go, the district operates under a long-term capital and project plan. 2023 followed the plan with no significant alterations. There were, as were discussed in directors' reports throughout 2023, a few projects and or purchases that were pushed back for various reasons, such as timing for design funds or further investigation, but all those had been discussed, so I didn't try to list all those out here. But everything else that we did was well within what we had planned to do. For finances, a general overall of our finances, as we discussed in the December director's report, financially, the district saw an overall healthy year. Revenue in our sewer fee and landfill fee were just above or right at expectation. The tax revenue was also slightly better than expected, with a little more overall property tax and a little less circuit breaker, which Emily Palmer reported to me within the last few weeks. But expenditures across the district were within what was budgeted at the close of the year, despite the appropriation made for fuel costs. Reminder, the finance sheets included are through 12/31/23 and are not a true final statement. So again, some invoices trickle in, and I won't have that final. I don't know exactly when finance will complete that, probably within the next month or so, a true final. But those trickled in invoices that have happened at the start of 2024, those were all against 2023 encumbered dollars, and the encumbrances are reflected in that report. So again, nothing would have fallen outside of what was encumbered. So So overall, that was there. There's a lot of data here for the waste audit. I decided to include here. It's the tables and graphs that go with the raw data, not necessarily the kind of cumulative output of what we may do with that, but I did want to include at least the raw data here. But as I've spoken many times regarding our failing equipment at our MRF, but as we replace equipment, we should use a strategy that aligns with the EPA's newest guidelines regarding landfill diversion. Plus, as a municipality that owns our own landfill, that behooves us and our citizens to extend that life. But we've been investigating the paths available to us for what would work best to meet those strategies, and trying to use the data to leverage for grant dollars. In 2023, we were awarded a grant through the Wayne County Foundation that allowed us to have a waste audit conducted on each route of our residential trash collection. So as you see in the tables, it'll say like T1, T2, that's Tuesday, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 routes, and then Wednesday, 1 through 6, all the way through Friday. Because we feel that this data will really help us develop metrics, which will be much more critical in acquiring these larger grants to do the main path or the main equipment that will be needed. But if you look through those graphs, there are definitive fluctuations in data per route, with some routes obviously participating more in the recycling program than others. Overall, though, it looks as if we could collect 5 to 10 times more of the recycling material we already collect. And I state that as the material we currently collect. We are only pulling about 2% of the material that's out there, and it looks like overall that's in all the trash is around a 20% or so of the items we already collect. Organics, you'll see, are a large portion on there, and I know the EPA has guidelines for that. That'll probably be more like a phase 2 or phase 3. It's a little more difficult to get those segregated from the stream, and then what you do with those in the stream is just a little bit more difficult. And I don't think they completely have that mapped out yet. A lot of places are pulling it out and composting it. But if you're looking at the EPA's total piece of carbon reduction, that's just converting it into carbon dioxide. And the other way, if it's in the landfill, it breaks down pretty readily and leaves you your space, and it makes methane. So that discussion's a long-term one. If you're going to come up with a way to use methane, that may be better than to compost it and turn it into CO2 or try to capture the CO2. So we're still looking at that. So I don't know what the organics may become, but I know that in some way that'll get offset in some manner, which is you'll see in here is probably another average of 20-25% of what was in the total trash. Interestingly, we did the audit in October, and there's a giant pumpkin section. So it was enough that they made it its own little point. But we do a program for special pickup for Christmas trees, but we've never done anything for pumpkins. So I don't know. That may be something. We spitballed some really funny things about what we could do as a pumpkin collection piece, but that may warrant something in the long term. But we hope to use that data, obviously, long-term planning. But in the short term, we are going to try to target areas that are low-hanging fruit, that have a lot of recyclables available, and trial run some education outreach efforts to see what may work well. And really, what we want to do is line that up against, there's not a lot of recycling, but is there not a lot of Richies in the area, or are there a lot of Richies? Is it a case of they have the access or interested in it, it's just education, or is it they don't even have Richies, So to do that, and then we also want to see what that does to our personnel demands and route sizing. I mean, there's a lot to work through. Like I said, ultimately what I think we go to is that we don't hand sort, so that week where we're not collecting can become a week of collecting, that every other week. So we gain twice as many days of collecting available to us. So I think personnel-wise we can do it. It's just how do we have to break routes up, and it may require a major overhaul. The section of town that maybe is Route T1 now, if everybody had a Richie, we may not actually be able to do that in one day. So it may be, you don't want to split up new people to the off Tuesday, right? You'd probably have to cut the route somewhere so that I only do half of it on this week, and you'd have to alter. It would be a really major underhaul to alter routes based upon size and what a vehicle can collect. So we'll try to trial run a small area and just kind of get a feel of what that may look like and what those demands may be on us in the future if we did it across the city.
Yeah, I noticed that Like you mentioned, there's definitely some low-hanging fruit where there was one route that had a really large amount of cardboard,
Yes.
more so
Cardboard
than
and
others.
paper
There was
turns up
another
well.
that had a large amount of the number one plastic.
Oh, yeah.
So it's, I thought it was interesting how it was just not consistent across all routes that we were seeing things very close. So, it's definitely clear you can manage what you can measure. So now, having this is really sort of eye-opening to me of how much is, like you say, still out there that we could put through the recycling.
Correct. And I think another piece is just, when I'm talking about what we could expand on what we currently collect, I think that if we're no longer sorting and we're going to send the material likely compacted to some level, but send it to one of these auto sorting facilities, these large auto sorting facilities, we can include things that they recycle. Now we're held to space and size, but you'll see things that we don't, like the 3 through 7 plastics and some of these other recyclable items that we can't do by size, but if we started shipping that off compacted, we could also collect that as well. Now, if you look, it's a fairly small percentage of that total 20, you may be talking 20, 25%, I think we could get. Those recyclable, that may be like 3% of these, 3 to 5% of the things we don't currently get, but 3 to 5% is 3 to 5% over time, so.
Did anybody else have anything on the audit?
I think
a-
well, I'm go-
No, please.
it's so nice to see that all the improvements that were made at the plant, that is, you've cut the energy use by almost a third
Yeah.
of what it was just like 2 years ago. And that is a lot of money.
Yeah, we reduced like 200,000 kilowatt hours per month or
Yeah.
something like that.
That's-
I was actually going to piggyback off that, and similar to that, I mean, with the significant energy reduction that's already happened, are you guys pushing for more at the plant? Like, is there a target that you're trying to achieve, or, I mean, at this point, I feel like,
Obviously, we want to have as much as possible. The blowers in the wastewater treatment plant are by far the largest energy consumption unit. And we've done what we believe can be done there, and that made up for the large. There are some other things. We've obviously, I think we came to you 2 years ago maybe or something, and we discussed maybe solar. There's some solar things out there that can maybe help push this down. We've obviously looked several times, both at the landfill and the treatment plant, about how the methane gas could be used, and those types of things. I think that what we're looking at the treatment plant would probably be a case where we don't use the methane gas there. I think we're going to change it in a way that the methane gas won't be there. We're going to try a different thing that I think gives us no methane, but a lot more tanks that maybe could be used in our high-rate treatment process. I think it's just a different method, but again, if you're talking overall energy usage, which you see in these finances, we could tackle maybe some of the stuff at the landfill by using that gas. I know Elijah and I have sat through and talked to multiple companies over the last year and a half or so. We met with AJ not too long ago to discuss, because the district doesn't sell very many things, right? We buy things, we don't. So there's a different process for that. But the difficulty in that landfill gas, even though there's a lot of new technology, it's not like everybody's pitching you one idea. There's at least 4 different ways I can think of off the top of my head that people are actively using the gas for. And then there's sort of out-of-the-box variations of each 4 of those. How do you compare apples to apples even? But I hope that we can get something out this year so we can pull some proposals in and look at that. But that, I think, solar and the landfill gas are 2 areas I know that we can still make strides to reduce energy.
thank you.
Something else that sort of shocked me was in the sanitary collection, the construction debris removed can we find people?
I mean, a lot of that on the construction debris removed is like if we do a project or there's a project there and it's just like, okay, we took out this concrete box, and put a new box. We just weigh what we take to the landfill essentially of construction on projects.
not-
Most of that's not actually people throwing stuff down our way, because that is a huge number. Now, as far as inlet debris and grit and stuff like that, I mean, those aren't really things I think that we would be easy to track who distributed that, and there's gonna be grit regardless, in systems, but both of those are still fairly large. I don't know if they're fairly large in respect to our sewer, our amount of wastewater compared to other communities, but I mean, 200,000, pounds is a lot regardless. If you're looking at just the grit, right, that's a lot to remove out of a system.
Yeah. And you mentioned that the property taxes came in more than expected. Was more collected after the end of the year? Because it looked like from the financials.
So that on the financials is a tricky piece. I didn't quite understand it till about 2 years ago. It took me away. We estimate higher. So even though what we show, I don't remember off the top of my head. I think in the budget thing, it probably says 8 million or something. We collected like 6. That 8 is because there's no line, there's no account line for circuit breaker. So we basically take what we think we're going to get in property tax, add the circuit breaker to it. So that's kind of misleading. If you just look at the budget sheet, it'll show 8 and we got 6. No, because we really didn't think we would get 6. It was like, it may have been like 5, 8, but we had to add that couple million of circuit breaker on top of that because there's not an expenditure line for circuit breaker. So we just add that in the revenue so it offsets itself.
Other side. And throughout, we had, it seemed like we had an underage in our capital improvements, but our leases were up because of the change in our philosophy to go to more leasing. So,
True. Yeah, so on heavy equipment, I mean, we realized on the trash, it seemed like on the trash trucks particularly, and the sewer flush trucks, over the last, I guess we started on the trash trucks before I moved into this position, so 2018, 2019 or so, they moved that philosophy that it helped us just because, I'm going to spitball numbers here, I'd have to look them up, but it's roughly $250,000 per trash truck. If you do that, the way that budget's set up, we could buy one per year. With 6 trucks, the problem is you kind of have, you get a couple that are really aged out, whereas we lease, we can spend roughly $250 per year, $250,000 per year. So basically the same cost, but I get all 6 at the same time. They're all new. And we felt that that was a better overall philosophy. So that's what we had worked towards. And we found that the vac trucks kind of was a very similar piece. So we've done that.
so as our budget goes forward for like this year and beyond, we will see less in capital and more in lease every.
I think so. And I think in some of the cases, like, we try to ahead of the time when we do the budget, like, put it in lease as an estimated or put it in capital, depending. If you remember last year, we actually bought, I think we purchased outright, or it may have been the year before and we received it last year. I have to go look through the piece, but a commercial trash truck we bought outright because the supply chain was so bad, they didn't have 6 to lease, so we didn't have that option available to us, but we did need at least one, so we did buy that one. So there's times where from some supply chain demands, we weren't able to do it when we would have likely done it if we could have. But yes, you probably will see that shift slowly, particularly in the tax fund capital, where we will shift more towards leasing those vehicles as opposed to buying them.
Thank you. Great job. A lot of projects going every year as always, and will continue this year. Any other questions? Thank you. Thanks for all of the hard work on that and for each of your departments as well. I'm sure they had a piece in putting their part of the puzzle together here.
Yeah, and they put up with me nagging them for different sets of data that I want to see over the end of the year. So.
Yeah. The next item of business is the recommendation to approve addendum number 1 to contract 8-2021 with Rumpke Waste and Recycling Center Services.
Yes, Madam President and Board. First, I want to start that this should actually read amendment to 58-2021 instead of 8-2021. That was an error on my part in sending that to law for the contract request. I had a typo there, so it should say that. There is another typo in the overall thing. Item number 2 of it references contract 28-2022, which is a non-related contract. That should also say 58-2021. And I did not fully catch all that till this morning, so that's my apologies that we did not have that in ahead of time. Yes, but this contract, or this addendum, Contract 58/2021, allows for beyond its, after it has expired, which it did expire at the end of last year, the Contract 58/2021 is worded that it can be extended by an addendum. And we felt after reviewing this that we would like to do that addendum and extend that. That contract was currently with Rumpke. Rumpke has provided these services. They've won the bid for the last probably at least 3 times. So probably somewhere around 10 years they've held this contract. As we're in the process of, and this contract is for them to, they collect our baled and our compressed and baled recyclables, sorted recyclables, and they pay us that rebate. As we're going through a lot of changes in that program, or looking to do a lot of changes in that program, we want, and even the waste audit that we conducted was through Rumpke. We just felt it would behoove us right now to stay consistent through this process until we get sorted out what we are doing. So we know there are pieces for this. Like I said, we may start changing some things and try hitting low-hanging fruit. And again, we may be exploring variables on our end, and we felt it just would help us to keep consistency at this time. So we did have one other change in there that I do want to note. The not to exceed amount, we did increase. That not to exceed is usually for our contaminated glass. The way our sorter works, it leaves a lot of contamination in and over. There's really, by the time we pay the shipping fee to them to take the glass and then resort it, our rebate is really small, so we usually pay a small number. If we go to where our current sorting machine were to break altogether, instead of doing a very expensive repair, we may look at just paying a shipping fee and doing that where we ship all the commingle off to them. So I just wanted that ability, or if I do have to repair it, last year when we had to make repairs, finding parts were really hard, and the building was down for a really long period of time, and we only have limited space to store what we're collecting until the machine gets repaired. So this allows me to ship it somewhere to be sorted, and it just gives me that flexibility.
Any questions or a motion?
President Miller?
Yes, Mr. Bakshi?
Motion for recommendation to approve amendment number 1 to contract 58/2021 with Rumpke Waste and Recycling Services. Also acknowledge that there are some corrections that will be made as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve addendum 1 to contract 58/2021 with Rumpke Waste and Recycling Services with the minor modifications to the contract as presented, or the addendum as presented. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item of business is the recommendation to approve private hauler permits number 42 to 56 for waste management expiring on 12/31 of 2024.
President Miller,
Yes, Mr. Steens.
make a motion to approve private hauler permit number 42 through 56 with waste management expiring December 31st of 2024.
Second?
There's been a motion and a second, excuse me, to approve private waste hauler permit 42 to 56 for waste management expiring on December 31st of 2024. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're doing these individually then. The next 4 items, 6, 7, 8, and 9, relate to the contracts or agreements for appraisal services.
Yes, Madam President and Board. So I'll kind of discuss it, I guess, all together, and then we can make separate motions. So we have multiple projects that will require appraisal services for either the purchase of easements or property. So we requested for those individual projects proposals from a couple different appraisal companies. And so it's our recommendation to enter into 2 different agreements, one for each contractor, one for each appraiser, for both specifically these projects the easements for Midwest Industrial Park and Round Barn Road Sewer project, as well as a property to potentially purchase, as well as just general appraisal services as needed going forward. So it's my recommendation to enter into an agreement with American United Appraisal Company for these appraisals and additional appraisal services as needed. That's the first one.
So are we doing just Midwest Industrial, or do we just want to say an agreement to enter it with American United Appraisal for Midwest, and then the other property purchase and
I'd say
other
one motion
services?
Now that I've got some clarification, one motion per contractor.
Okay. So one motion for American United for all services. Freeze that out.
I can.
Okay.
I'll just be very generic. President Miller?
Yes, Mr. Bakshi?
Motion for recommendation to enter into agreement with American United Appraisal Company for appraisal of Midwest Industrial Park and Round Barn Road sewer easements as presented.
I think we're doing more. Are we doing?
It's one motion per contractor, so with American United Appraisal Company for the projects as presented and for future.
Okay, and for future projects
Okay.
as presented.
So that will take care of items 6 and 9.
9. That's the way I see it.
I do have one quick question. Are the fees, are there other fees involved with what besides it was presented, or that's what they're gonna charge?
No, that's what, I mean, they were a little bit different on each one.
Yeah.
But that's what they would charge for
Okay.
those. Now, the one I know had, depending on if structures were impacted or not, there's a different fee spelled out for that. But
And I think it's also important to make clear that we are awarding contracts to 2 appraisers for the same properties because we are required to get
Correct.
multiple appraisers.
Correct.
I will
You
second.
second, okay. There's a motion and a second to enter into agreements with American United Appraisal for the projects presented as well as other future projects that might present themselves. Do we need to put a time limit on that, or just,
Say for the 2024 calendar year?
Could we say 2024 and 25?
Yes.
24 and 25 calendar year?
I'll amend it to add 2024 and 2025.
Okay,
And second.
second. Okay, do I have to restate it again? Do you need it? It was to enter into an agreement with American United Appraisal for the projects presented currently and for future projects which may present themselves in 2024 and 2025. Does that sound good? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item of business is similar to enter into an agreement with Matt Napodi for the Midwest Industrial Park, Round Barn Road. Item 8, which was property for purchase, and other future properties. Did you want to say anything more about that one?
No, same thing, just different appraiser.
Okay. Do we?
I'll make that motion.
Okay,
Same as
Same as
previous
the other one.
motions.
okay.
Oh, is that good? I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to enter an agreement with Matt Napodi for appraisal of projects presented at the current meeting, as well as further appraisal services which may be required in 2024 and 2025. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item of business is the recommendation to approve Amendment Number 1 to Contract 196-2022 with Commonwealth for Midwest Industrial Park and Round Barn Road Geotechnical Evaluation.
Yes, Madam President and Board. We currently have a contract, 196-2022 with Commonwealth Engineers to do one of the two projects associated with Midwest Industrial Park. This one specifically is the Round Barn Road Interceptor Improvements Project. We did complete some soil and geotechnical investigation over this past year. Part of this construction is anticipated to be trenchless because it's deep, but those borings came back with cobbles and stones, and we would like to get some more borings in order to give contractors a better idea because it's pretty critical to the type of equipment they use and ultimately the risk they ultimately take when they bid things. So it's our recommendation to enter into an amendment number 1 to contract 196-2022 for this additional geotechnical evaluation for a total additional cost of $51,750.
Questions or comments? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
President Miller,
Yes, Mr. Bakshi?
motion for recommendation to approve amendment number 1 to contract 196-2022 with Commonwealth for Midwest Industrial Park and Round Barn Road geotechnical evaluation as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve amendment number 1 to contract number 196-2022 with Commonwealth Engineers, Inc. for additional geotechnical evaluation for the Round Barn and Midwest Interceptor Improvements projects as presented. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item of business is the recommendation to approve change order number 1 to contract 54-2023 with Brackney for the Hayes Lift Station.
Yes, Madam President and Board. This is change order number 1 for our Hayes Lift Station Force Main Improvement Project with Brackney. They proposed an alternate material for the casing pipe that they were using during their bore and jack installation, and it presented a savings. We evaluated along with the engineering firm, and it's our recommendation to accept this change for a savings of $65,000. So we're removing one line item and adding another with that alternate material and a reduced cost. There's no additional days associated with this change order, just a reduction in total project cost of $65,000, bringing the new project cost to $3,250,715.
Questions or a motion on this?
President Miller,
Yes, Mr. Stevens.
make a motion to approve change order number 1. This is for the Hayes Lift Station and Force Main Improvements Project with Brackney Incorporated. Change orders for a negative $65,000, bringing the current total price to $3,250,715.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve change order number 1 with Brackney, Inc. for the Hayes Lift Station and Force Main Improvements Project. This is a net decrease of $65,000 for a adjusted contract price of $3,250,715. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item of business is the recommendation to approve change order number 1 to contract 53-2023 with Sunesis for the Short Creek Lift Station.
Yes, Madam President and Board. This is our Short Creek Lift Station Improvement Project, change order number 1. The work here is associated with some additional or modified infrastructure that we were planning on putting in near the lift station to direct the flows from the gravity sewer into the new lift station. What we found during construction or during the initial construction and investigation was that a lot of debris and material were dumped on the site when they finished it and assumed when they built it before. And so that prevented us from getting some information. We were finally able to do that, and because of both the material where it's at and The elevations that we found, we needed to modify the connections that were being proposed to be made. So there's a new manhole that's being added, another one that's being modified, and a little bit additional gravity sewer, along with some additional dewatering and potential pavement restoration. Those two things are may or may not be billed, but are part of this in case they need to be. So it's my recommendation to approve change order 1 for an additional cost to the project of $102,300 for a new total cost of $6,074,100.
Questions?
I have
or-
just a quick
Yes,
one I'm curious about. How deep are these manholes, Elijah?
They are 30-ish feet, 20, 25, 30.
Big diameter then, too?
What are these? Yeah, they're not a standard 4-foot diameter manhole, because it's 36
I was
inch
just looking
pipe.
at the price of the manhole.
Yeah, they're
Holy
not-
cow, must be pretty deep and
Not cheap.
pretty beefy.
Yeah.
Make a motion or any other comments?
President Miller?
Yes, Mr. Bakshi?
Motion for recommendation to approve change order number 1 to contract 53-2023 with Sunesis for Short Creek Lift Station as presented.
I'll second.
There's been a motion and a second to approve change order number 1 to contract 53-2023 with Sunesis Construction Company as presented. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to miscellaneous. Does anyone have any other business to be brought before the board today? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second?
There's been a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.